What's going on, guys? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. With 2022 coming to a close in just a few days, I wanted to take a look back at these few months we had in the year with Overwatch 2, assess where it's at, and look forward towards the future. Blizzard had a lot of communication to set expectations thus far, but the next year, all we really have is the vague plan of more of the same and the undefined launch of the PvE campaign. That massive component they've been pretty quiet on, and that's the part that most gamers are going to think is required for the 2 next to the sequel's early access name. Other than that, with the new seasons, we can expect new heroes, maps. That content pipeline is in full swing, but is that enough to keep Overwatch 2 competitive into the next year? We'll discuss further and break it all down after this quick message. Today's video sponsor is Yahaha. Yahaha is a new user-generated content creation platform for 3D multiplayer interactive experiences. The cool thing is you don't need any coding experience or server knowledge. You just take the millions of their smart assets, combine them together, and create your own game experience to play, share, and enjoy. Especially you Overwatch players that are into either the arcade or workshop, I think this will be right up your alley. Yahaha also hosts live streams to help their community of creators with their metaverse building skills that you either can check out live on Twitch or with the VODs on YouTube. Building in Yahaha is super fun and easy. For example, I can take the template for the hide and seek game mode. I can pick my own assets, adjust them how I like, and customize my very own game experience. Especially you workshop fans, you really want to check this one out. You can check out Yahaha for free by clicking the link in the description, or you can scan the QR code that's on screen right now. You can scan the QR code or take the link in the description to try out Yahaha and begin making your dream game today. We recently released a podcast recapping the year with Avril, Flats, and the GOAT of Overwatch content, Seagull. Seagull, despite being incredibly pessimistic sounding at every turn about Overwatch 2, gave Overwatch 2 the same grade that I did in the end.
Now we have an incentive, a business incentive, to continually update. Yeah, it's probably like a B- or something.
You worked all your way to the same grade as me. Are you kidding me? You that had an entire plot line, bro. Like it went left and right.
Gameplay's varying. If it didn't have a significant improvement for gameplay, oh my god, I would go insane. It'd be horrible. Like I would never. Yeah. Just that I cannot stress enough how different it is. And I think a lot of those gameplay changes also fuel a lot of the issues that we have of matchmaking now.
So I thought that was quite surprising. And then on top of that, if you look at the Twitch and YouTube metrics for viewership, it can hardly be said that interest of Overwatch 2 is dead on arrival like many assumed it to be, yet the conversation about the game can feel utterly dire at times. And we don't even have what might be the best part of the game with the PvE campaign. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm lukewarm on Overwatch 2 now for reasons that I'll explain, but it's very interesting that someone that was very positive on the game gave it a B-, and someone that's very pessimistic about the game entirely also gave it a B-. One of the interesting takeaways from the conversation in the podcast about PvE was thinking about what we should be able to expect from the PvE next year. Some very reasonable takeaways, I think, is that it might be an amped up Junkenstein's Revenge, in that a longer, more expanded version of the new Halloween mission that we got. We have no idea how many missions, how much replayability, and what it's going to cost. And I think it's safe to say that in 2023, if that releases undercooked, that's going to be a serious problem. But to some degree, I think it's natural to assume that it will. Because if they felt that they could invest the time in order to get the entire campaign up to snuff, why didn't they just wait to release it then? Because no, they had to switch gears and work towards PvP. None of us are really sure how much of the PvE got completed. Is it like almost done? Or is it more like we're going to get small updates and missions added on throughout the seasonal model? I think it's reasonable to expect that there will not be a substantial end game like the PvE was supposed to get. Previous communication from BlizzCon years ago stated that they wanted the game to be endlessly replayable, but that requires end game, which typically is added in later on. For example, Destiny 2 launched with almost no end game, and it was released over time through expansions. That also was a game that, had a full campaign at release, which we don't know if we can expect for Overwatch 2 or not. Blizzard's other titles like Diablo, I've been watching watching coverage about the discussion of the game and how Diablo 3 was developed, as well as upcoming talk about Diablo 4. And in Diablo 3, the producers knew a lot of the problems that were baked into the game from the start and assumed they'd be able to sort of add it later instead of delaying it. Because when you have a boxed model product, you kind of just want to get the average player's experience set, which is like the story of the game playing through once, and you worry about the expansive end game for the hardcore players well down the line. So I think that probably is what we should expect for PvE in Overwatch 2, but there's a little bit of a glimmer of hope that because no game that I know of, other than maybe like the expansion model of World of Warcraft or something, has been created the way Overwatch 2 has, because it's not like we have a full campaign and we're building on things on top of it. No, instead, the PvE is going to be launching separate. Will part of it be free? Will part of it be in the Battle Pass? Will it be like Halo, where you pay for the campaign, but the multiplayer is free with some paywall access, early access type content like heroes in the Battle Pass? It's reasonable to think that might be the route they go. With so many options, the table's set for Blizzard to surpass the low expectations that exist, as long as it's fun and fair. And the constant financial incentive to react to our feedback means there's a chance it can get better over time, but I'm expecting it to be a little weak to begin. Also, I'll note that especially for cooperative things, it's usually a bad idea in order to have matchmaking have a paywall. So it'll be very interesting how they go about that. And imagine this, what if the PvE was generous? Like, would we feel better about Overwatch 2's monetization if the skins were expensive, but the content was relatively cheap? Because that is kind of how they've gone about new hero editions. A lot of players are very sour about that, but $10 for a hero and a battle pass is a deal in some games. What if they add more things into it, increasing the value of it with additional PvE stuff? The reason why I think that might be an option is because they're really trying to get it into what seems to be like a subscription model almost, where you tune in for a season, pay your fee, get access to everything, and that keeps the pipeline going, and also importantly, keeps the money flowing so they know how to plan their budget for the upcoming content, which clearly was a massive problem for Overwatch 1, where they ran out of gas and were trying to fuel the development of the sequel on hopes and dreams, a strategy that was never going to work to keep Overwatch 1 competitive. Okay, so that's the prelude. I want to think about PvE in that light. What's going to be interesting is the amount of content we get, the business model attached to it, and whatever other adjustments they make to the reward systems and monetization to the general game. Overwatch 2's progression and monetization has been unacceptable. While there's parts of it that I think are very fair, having completely unrewarding challenges that barely do anything for you, like they give you such little currency, what's even the point? Like, it's really only designed in order for you to afford the battle pass, but never a skin. And here's my question, Blizzard. This psychology really matters, okay? If that's your intention, that completing all the challenges in a season will afford you a battle pass, why don't you just put the currency in the battle pass, right? Or make that more fair and rewarding in some way. I'll tell you why. It's because they want to give you a little bit of that currency, because with these currency systems, they trick you into investing more into it because you never can spend it neatly. You've always got a little bit extra left over, which incentivizes you to maybe buy some more to get a skin that keeps you with a lopsided amount, and then you're kind of always spending into it and wanting to like even out how much you've put in. That's what sucks about these systems. And in the podcast, Siegel went at length to explain how he was hoping that Overwatch would be better than other games, but we've mostly just copied other games. Rather than leading by example, Blizzard went the more stingy route in some key areas. I think the PvE content is an opportunity for Blizzard to look more fair to the consumer in the business model, especially if it's good. Because if it's an exorbitant price, but good, that'll still be a bit sour. But if it's good and fair, and they eventually change the reward system, which I think it's sort of implied that they're looking at it based on some of the comments they've made, that could paint for a better turnaround in 2023. Because those are the major issues for me, at least for the general consensus. Now I want to get into some of the final issues with the gameplay balance, etc. That we talked about this at length in the podcast, except for one major issue, the matchmaking. Overwatch 2's matchmaking system seems to not be fit fit for purpose, as it was largely designed around Overwatch 1, and the sequel is a very different game. And what we think they've done, is our guess, is in order to improve queue times, they've opened up the bands of player skill differential for a team, which makes for lopsided games and experiences. Now, in the blog post recently, they said they've attempted to try to get players matched at similar roles. So therefore, if you have a diamond tank, the enemy will also have a diamond tank to mirror that. So at the very least, you are in the same level on that role, because otherwise what can happen is a higher rated tank can stomp over the entire enemy team if there isn't an equally skilled tank to oppose them. My problem with this is that on top of that, the gameplay has turned into incentivizing counterpicking in a way that wasn't present in the beta. Part of it is that you retain ult charge on hero swap, a mechanic that badly needs to go, but also based on the matchmaking as it is, you kind of have to counter the guy in front of you that you're matched against if you want to win. So that means when the enemy's picking Roadhog and hooking your team, you have to mirror it, because it's one of the only ways you can really counter him in the most efficient way possible. While you can play Orisa and maybe to a weaker extent D.Va, in a lot of cases, you just got to mirror the Sojourn or whatever it is, because the way the matchmaker's set up is it expects you to go at the value of a direct one-to-one player, which is doubling down on this counterpicking problem. And while for the whole year I give Overwatch 2 a B-, for balance, I'd say my grade would drop as low as a C, because you got things that still have not been rectified, like them nerfing Junker Queen just for the pros, mind you, before Kiriko was even added to the game. They never seem to know how to compensate for the very obvious ramifications of one decision, so they're always playing catch up. I hate this. And it gets frustrating that we're seemingly always so close to the game playing really well, but they never get out ahead of the balance problems. And so I am not looking forward to that continuing next year. And instead now, what I'm really hoping for is that we can eventually start taking a format change seriously. Because if in fact, as new heroes get added, it's the expectation that not every player is going to have every hero for competitive, well then we can talk seriously about having a draft mode, which I do think would be not just a good thing for the game, but maybe the only way to save Blizzard from themselves, is a competitive format where you select the heroes ahead of time, because if you don't do that, then at any point, the enemy has a full roster of selections to hard counter you, doubling down on the matchmaking problems and the really oppressive meta that ends up happening. Playing for mirror matches sucks, and whether the matchmaking is in fact fair or not is a point that Blizzard is just kind of missing. Overwatch 1 was all about them not fixing problems fast enough as they created new ones, and I want to see in 2023 them to change that. An example we talked about on the podcast is this whole seasonal identity idea, where they buff things just to shake things up. I'm really hoping that they can abandon that terrible strategy as being the way they add diversity into the game, because first of all, competitive diversity can come from format. You could have a draft mode, but also they added new characters. That is what changes the game. The new mechanics that are interesting to play around. They don't need to overbuff Doom, because it turns out, I think, Doom can be decent when Ramatra's in the game anyway. One of the biggest victories that I don't think players in the community really hail is that Ramatra wasn't overpowered. And in fact, I still think isn't. But for some reason, it seems like we can't be happy with Blizzard adding what is basically a balanced hero to the game. They don't get any credit for that. We're furious when things are overtuned, but it seems like players are bored when they're undertuned. I have a lot of complaints about the game, but them adding Ramatra is one of the most interesting additions, because it gave a bunker-esque controlling playstyle in the character, which I find fun to play as a challenge, but also made a bunch of other heroes a lot better when in a matchup against him. So you can go Rhine, Wrecking Ball, Doomfist, these heroes that want to rush in at you. That is what makes Overwatch interesting to me, and you don't need to tweak the dials of balance so hard in order to make that happen. There's healthier ways to do it. And keeping the game random, it just isn't healthy at all, because it just starts to make really lopsided results that are hard to predict for Blizzard. Maybe not as much for the community, but Blizzard doesn't seem to know which way they're pushing the game. So I'm nervous about the culmination of these things coming together in 2023. I'm really hoping they don't just keep doubling down on things that don't work. I hope they change it. Change your strategy. You don't have to do this, Blizzard. You can reassess. They so badly want this game to succeed. It's almost like they're twisting every knob and pulling every lever at the same time, just trying to make sure that it's interesting. It's still interesting, right? We're updating the game. It's like, well, just add a new map and a new character, and I think that will be enough. And maybe I'm wrong in saying that, but I just don't think you have to Giga buff Doomfist and Dumpster Genji and then wait and see what's going to happen. It's like, be more reactive with these things. I'm hoping they're going to be more reactive and reasonable and proactive, most importantly, in 2023. And interesting to think about is we're not getting a new hero in season 3. So the hero roster as it stands is going to maintain, but they have been hinting that there's other content coming. I think it's too early for that to be PvE in season 3, but they have been talking about other stuff they want to keep adding. I think the best thing they can do is keep the balance of the game for the health of the game, not for variety. That's silly. And instead just add more content rather than tweaking the balance just to skew the performance of heroes up and down. Because as I've said, when you do that, you boom and bust players' MMR just based on the heroes that they can play all of a sudden get better or worse, when that is bound to make for terrible matchmaking. What should we expect? And because of that and how poor the matchmaking feels, I wish they would just commit to an actual soft MMR reset anyway. Only resetting the rewards is just a major feels bad. And since you have to play so long to get an update, you're then stuck at that icon forever, it seems, like multiple play sessions. Guys, that's everything I have for today's recap and look forward towards 2023. Let me know your thoughts on Overwatch 2 in the comment section down below. Are you happy with the year so far? What grade do you give it? I gave it a B-, but so did Seagull. So I'm not that crazy, am I? What's your grade? What do you want to see from them in the next year? To support the channel, be sure to leave the video with a like, and don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos come live, and check out today's video sponsor, Yahaha, in the link below. You can make your own gaming experiences if Overwatch isn't the one that's working for you recently. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.